The large meeting room was filled with strange creatures from across the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others had blue skin and tentacles where humans had hair. A few creatures floated in the air instead of sitting in chairs. They all belonged to the Galactic Council, the group that made decisions for hundreds of different species living among the stars. Jake Morrison sat at the small human table near the back of the room. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. For 3 years, he had been Earth's main speaker at these meetings. For 3 years, he had been saying the same thing over and over again. Nobody listened anymore. The room buzzed with different languages being translated by small devices everyone wore in their ears. Jake could hear clicks, whistles, and sounds that hurt his throat just thinking about making them. But when the translation came through, the meaning was always clear. Today, they were talking about taking away human worlds again. High Counselor Vextai stood up at the front of the room. He was from the Xanthari species, and he looked like a praying mantis that had grown to be 8 feet tall. His green skin shined under the bright lights, and his forearms moved as he talked. The Xanthari were old and powerful. They had been conquering other worlds for thousands of years. The matter before us today is simple, Vextai said in his clicking voice. The humans have claimed a world they call New Haven. This world sits in space that rightfully belongs to the Xanthari Empire. We have maps that prove our ancestors flew through that area over 2,000 years ago. Jake felt his stomach twist into knots. New Haven was home to 50,000 humans. Most of them were farmers and their families. They had built small towns with schools and hospitals. Children played in parks there. Old people sat on porches and watched the sunset over fields of golden wheat. It was peaceful and quiet, exactly the kind of place humans loved to call home. Other council members started talking. A creature that looked like a walking tree said the Xanthari had the right to take any world they wanted. A being made of what looked like living crystal agreed. The Vorthans, who were gray and tall with huge black eyes, said humans were too new to the galaxy to deserve good worlds. Jake stood up slowly. The room got quiet. He had done this so many times before that some of the aliens started making sounds that the translator said were laughter. Counselors, Jake said in a calm voice, I have to tell you something important. Please don't make us angry. We don't want trouble with anyone. We came to join your galactic community because we wanted to be friends and neighbors. We built our towns on New Haven in peace. We didn't hurt anyone or take anything that belonged to someone else. More laughter came from around the room. A small blue creature with too many eyes made a comment that translated as the humans are scared again. Jake continued talking. We've been part of this council for 30 years now. In all that time, we've never started a fight. We've never attacked anyone. We've shared our technology and our food. We've helped other species when they asked for help. But we keep telling you the same thing, and you keep ignoring us. Yes? Yes, Vextai interrupted, waving one of his 4 hands. You keep saying not to make you angry. We've heard this many times. But what can you possibly do to us? Your ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are simple. Your military is smaller than most of our police forces. Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked bored. Others looked amused. None of them looked worried. I'm trying to warn you, Jake said. My species has a saying. Don't poke the sleeping bear. Do you know what that means? It means you think you're dangerous when you're not, said Counselor Murtok from the Vorthan delegation. Humans are soft. You negotiate instead of fight. You talk about peace and sharing. You're weak. Captain Lisa Rodriguez sat next to Jake at the human table. She was younger than Jake, with short black hair and dark eyes. She wore a blue uniform that looked plain compared to the fancy armor and robes the other species wore. Lisa was supposed to be the military expert for the human delegation, but even she didn't know all of humanity's secrets. Lisa leaned forward a little. "Counselor Murtaugh, you should listen to Ambassador Morrison. We really don't want any trouble." "See?" Vexthai clicked loudly. "Even their military leader sounds scared. Humans are prey animals pretending to be predators." The room filled with more laughter and agreement. Jake felt his hands shake a little, but not from fear. He was getting angry, which was exactly what he was trying to warn them not to do. "Please," Jake said one more time. "We're asking nicely. Don't take our world. Don't hurt our people. We want to solve this peacefully." "The vote will happen now," announced the council president, an ancient creature that looked like a giant slug, with arms. "All in favor of giving New Haven to the Xanthari Empire." Lights appeared above almost every delegation table. Green lights meant yes. Red lights meant no. The room was filled with green lights. Only the small human table showed red. "The motion passes," the president declared. "New Haven will be transferred to Xanthari control within 30 days. Human settlers will be relocated to a world more suitable for their limited abilities." Jake Morrison stood up again. His face was calm, but his voice carried something that made a few of the smarter aliens stop laughing. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "We tried to warn you. We've been trying to warn all of you for 30 years. Please don't make us angry." "What will you do, human?" Vexthai asked mockingly. "Send us a strongly worded letter? Ask for another vote?" Jake picked up his papers and started walking toward the door. Captain Rodriguez followed him. At the doorway, Jake turned around one. "Last time, we'll do what humans always do when someone threatens our families," he said. "We'll protect them." "With what army?" Vexthai called out. Jake Morrison looked at the High Counselor with eyes that suddenly seemed much older and much sadder. "You'll find out," he said. After the humans left, the council members continued their meeting. They talked about dividing up human technology and deciding which species would get which human colonies. The Xanthari wanted the farming worlds. The Vorthans wanted the mining colonies. Everyone agreed that humans were too weak to stop them. If any of them had been paying attention to Earth's history, they might have wondered why a species that seemed so peaceful had so many words for war. They might have asked why human children played games about battles and strategy. They might have noticed that every human story seemed to be about someone small defeating someone big, but they didn't pay attention to those things. They just saw a young species that talked about peace and friendship. They saw creatures that would rather negotiate than fight. They decided this meant humans were weak. In 30 days, the Xanthari First Fleet would arrive at New Haven. They expected to find scared farmers waiting to be relocated. They expected an easy victory against people who had never shown any sign of being dangerous. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this day since the moment they first learned. They weren't alone in the universe. They didn't know that every human colony ship was built for more than just transportation. They couldn't imagine that a species that talked constantly about peace might have very good reasons for wanting to avoid war. The Galactic Council had just made the biggest mistake in their long history. They had ignored 30 years of warnings from a species that really, truly didn't want to hurt anyone. Now they were about to learn why humans kept saying please. Admiral Crexmore stood on the bridge of his massive warship and smiled. Through the big window in front of him, he could see the planet New Haven floating peacefully in space. It looked like a blue and green marble with white clouds swirling. Around it, the planet was beautiful, but that didn't matter to him. What mattered was showing the galaxy that the Xanthari Empire was still the strongest force among the stars. The Admiral was old, even for a Xanthari. His green skin had turned darker with age, and scars covered his arms from 100 battles. He had been conquering worlds since before humans had even learned to fly. This would be his easiest victory yet. Status report, he clicked to his officers. Sir, we have detected only one human ship in orbit, reported his weapons officer. It appears to be a cargo vessel. No weapons detected. No shields active. Crexmore laughed, a sound like breaking glass. One cargo ship? That's their entire defense force? The Zenthari First Fleet was impressive. 200 warships hung in space. Around New Haven, like hungry wolves circling a sheep. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city. The smallest ship in the fleet was bigger than any human vessel they had ever seen. On board the human ship CSS Freedom, Captain Ben Collins sat in his simple chair and watched the alien fleet surround his world. Ben was 64 years old, with gray hair and wrinkles around his eyes. He had been a cargo pilot for most of his life, carrying supplies between human colonies. His ship looked old and worn, with patches welded over holes and engines that made too much noise. Captain, said his communications officer, a young woman named Mary Watson. The Zenthari Admiral is trying to contact us. Put him through, Ben, said quietly. Admiral Crexmore's huge face appeared on the main screen. His black eyes looked at Ben with amusement. Human, I am Admiral Crexmore of the Zenthari First Fleet. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare for planetary occupation. Ben Collins looked at the alien admiral for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and sad. Admiral, I'm going to ask you one more time to think about what you're doing. Please don't make us angry. Angry? Crexmore laughed again. You have one old cargo ship against my entire fleet. What could you possibly do to me? Nothing good. Ben replied, Please just leave. Take your ships and go home. Nobody has to get hurt today. The only ones who will be hurt are humans who resist, the Admiral said. You have 10 minutes to evacuate your ship before I destroy it. Ben Collins closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they looked very tired. Admiral, you don't understand what you're starting. I'm finishing it, Crexmore said, and cut off the communication. Down on New Haven's surface, the people of Greendale Township were gathering in the main square. Greendale was the biggest town on New Haven, but it was still small by Earth standards. Only 5,000 people lived there. They were mostly farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, and mechanics. The kind of people who just wanted quiet lives away from the busy, crowded worlds. Tom Baker stood with his wife Linda and their 3 children. Tom grew wheat and corn on a farm outside town. His hands were rough from working in the fields, and his face was brown from years under New Haven's sun. He held his youngest daughter, 6-year-old Amy, in his arms. Amy had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she was scared by all the big alien ships in the sky. Daddy, why are those ships here? Amy asked. Tom didn't know what to tell her. How do you explain to a child that strangers from another world want to take away her home? It's going to be okay, sweetheart, he said, even though he wasn't sure. It was true. The Zenthari landing ships came down like metal thunder. They were big and black and loud. The ground shook when they landed in the fields around Greendale. Doors opened with a hiss, and Zenthari soldiers marched out. The soldiers looked like their admiral, but younger and stronger. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their armor was thick and shiny. Each soldier was 8 feet tall and moved like a hunting animal. Commander Ziekval was in charge of the ground forces. He had fought in 20 wars and conquered 30 worlds. He expected the humans to run or hide or beg. Instead, he found them sitting quietly in the town square, waiting. Humans, he announced through a speaker that made his clicking voice loud. Enough for everyone to hear. This world now belongs to the Zenthari Empire. You will be relocated to a more suitable planet. Gather only essential belongings. You have 1 hour. Nobody moved. The humans just sat there, looking at him with calm faces. Tom Baker stood up slowly, still holding Amy. "Commander, this is our home. Our children were born here. We built this town with our own hands. Please don't make us leave." "You have no choice," Ziegfeld clicked. "Resist and you will be punished." "We're not resisting," said Sarah Green, the town school teacher. "We're just asking you to show mercy." Commander Ziegfeld looked around at all the human faces. They weren't angry or scared. They just looked sad. It confused him. Every species he had conquered before had either fought back or begged for their lives. These humans were doing neither. In space above the planet, Admiral Crexmore was getting impatient. The human cargo ship was still there, just floating quietly. It hadn't tried to attack or run away. It was just there, like it was waiting for something. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the humans on the surface are complying with evacuation." "Orders. No resistance detected." "Good," Crexmore said. "But I want to make sure they understand their place in the galaxy. Order Commander Ziegfeld to execute every 10th human as an example." The weapons officer looked surprised. "Sir, they aren't fighting back. Is that necessary?" "It's necessary to show what happens when someone challenges the Zenthari Empire." The Admiral replied coldly. The order went down to the planet's surface. Commander Ziegfeld received it and felt uncomfortable for the first time in years. Killing soldiers in battle was one thing. Killing peaceful civilians was another. But orders were orders. "Attention humans," he announced, "to ensure proper understanding of Zenthari authority. Every 10th person will be executed as an example." The humans in the square looked at each other with fear in their eyes for the first time. Parents held their children closer. Old people closed their eyes and said quiet prayers. Zenthari soldiers began counting off the humans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th person was Amy Peterson, still in her father's arms. "No," Tom Baker said, holding his daughter tighter. "Please, she's just a little girl." "Orders are orders," Commander Ziegfeld sighed, but his voice didn't sound as confident as before. A Zenthari soldier raised his weapon and pointed it at the child. Amy looked at the soldier with wide, confused eyes. She didn't understand what was happening. She just knew everyone was scared. "Please," Tom begged, "take me instead." "She hasn't done anything wrong." The soldier looked at his commander. Ziegfeld nodded. The energy weapon fired with a bright flash and a sound like breaking thunder. Amy Peterson was dead. Her father screamed and fell to his knees, holding her small body. Her mother collapsed beside them, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. The other humans in the square sat in shocked silence, staring at the little girl who would never grow up. In space, Captain Ben Collins felt something break inside his chest. His ship's computers had been monitoring everything happening on the planet's surface. Every human ship in the galaxy was connected to the same network. Every human colony, every human world, every human in space or on planets, all of them knew what had just happened. They had killed a child. Ben Collins opened a communication channel that reached every Zenthari ship in the system and broadcast beyond to the Galactic Council and every listening post in known space. "This is Captain Ben Collins of the CSS Freedom," he said, and his voice was different now. It was quiet, but filled with something that made hardened alien warriors feel cold. "You have murdered an innocent child. You have crossed a line that can never be uncrossed." Admiral Crexmore appeared on his screen again, still smiling. "One less human to relocate, old man. What are you going to do about it?" Ben Collins looked directly at the Admiral with eyes that no longer looked tired. They looked dangerous. "We tried to warn you," he said. "We really did. We told you not to make us angry, but you wouldn't listen. I'm still not listening. Crexmore laughed. Ben Collins reached for a control panel that had been covered by a metal plate. He pulled the plate away, revealing buttons and switches that definitely did not belong on a cargo ship. The gloves are coming off now, Ben said quietly. What does that mean? The Admiral demanded. Captain Collins pressed a single red button. The CSS Freedom began to change. What had looked like an old, worn cargo ship started unfolding like a flower made of metal and light. Hidden panels slid away, revealing weapons that hummed with power the galaxy had never seen before. The ship's engines, which had sounded rough and tired, now sang with perfect harmony. Energy fields that bent space itself surrounded the vessel. Admiral Crexmore's smile disappeared. What is that thing? This, Ben Collins said, is what a human ship really looks like when we stop pretending to be harmless. The first shot from the Freedom erased 3 Zentari warships from existence. Not destroyed them, not damaged them, erased them. One moment they were there. The next moment there was just empty space where they used to be. The second shot took out 10 more ships. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, in a place that didn't exist on any public map, Dr. Susan Grant walked quickly through hallways that had been carved from solid rock. The walls were lined with metal that reflected the bright lights overhead. Soldiers in black uniforms stood guard at every door, but they stepped aside when they saw her coming. Susan was a small woman with short red hair and green eyes behind thick glasses. She had been working in this underground facility for 22 years, ever since she finished her studies in physics and engineering. The people who worked here called it Site 7, but its real name was much longer and completely classified. Today was the day she had been preparing for her entire adult life. The emergency meeting room was filled with the most important people in the human government. President Karen Wells sat at the head of a long table, looking older than she had just a week ago. The stress of leading humanity through its first galactic crisis was showing on her face. General Peter Hayes sat across from the president. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. Next to him was Director Frank Murphy from the Central Intelligence Agency, a quiet man who knew more secrets than anyone else on Earth. Dr. Grant, President. Wells said as Susan entered the room, "Tell us exactly what we're dealing with." Susan sat down and opened a thick folder full of papers marked with red stamps that said Top Secret. Madam President, the galactic response is exactly what we predicted. Every major species is mobilizing their fleets. The Vorthans are calling for immediate military action against all human colonies. The Tekari Empire has already started moving ships toward our outer territories. How many ships are we talking about? General Hayes asked. Our intelligence estimates suggest they're assembling the largest military force in galactic history. Possibly 3 million warships from over 40 different species. President Wells closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead. And our response? Doctor. Grant smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a very long time to show what they had been building in secret. Madam President, what I'm about to tell you has been classified above your security level until this moment. Only 12 people on Earth knew the complete truth. Now that number is 13. She pressed a button on the table, and the lights dimmed. A holographic display appeared in the air above them, showing Earth's solar system. But it wasn't the solar system that appeared in school books or science documentaries. This is what our solar system really looks like, Susan said. The display showed Earth surrounded by hundreds of structures that definitely weren't natural. Space stations, weapons platforms, and things that looked like they might be ships, but were too big and strange to be sure. Lines of energy connected everything together in a web that reached all the way out to Pluto. We've been building this defense network since 1947, Susan continued. Every space mission, every satellite launch, every trip to the moon or Mars was actually part of this project. The International Space Station, that the galaxy thinks is for peaceful research, is actually the command center for the most advanced military system ever created. General Hayes leaned forward. How advanced are we talking about? Advanced enough that physics is more like a suggestion to us now, Susan replied. We can manipulate gravity, bend space, control time, and reshape matter at the atomic level. We figured out how to turn energy into solid objects, and solid objects back into energy. Director Murphy spoke for the first time. The colony ships? Every single human colony ship is actually a mobile weapons platform disguised as a cargo vessel. The colonists don't know this, of course. As far as they're concerned, they're living normal lives on farming worlds and mining colonies. But their ships, their power plants, even their farming equipment can be converted into military hardware in minutes. President Wells stared at the holographic display. How is this possible? How did we develop this technology without anyone knowing? Dr. Grant pressed another button, and the display changed to show Earth's history. We've been preparing for this since we first realized we weren't alone in the universe. In 1945, when we split the atom, we understood that we had discovered something incredibly dangerous. But we also realized that if we could split atoms, we could probably do other impossible things too. The display showed human scientists working in secret laboratories, engineers building strange machines, and mathematicians writing equations that looked more like art than science. We spent the next 80 years learning everything we could about the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Every war we fought, every conflict we had, taught us something new about strategy and tactics. Every disaster we survived showed us how to build better defenses. General Hayes asked the question that everyone was thinking. If we had this technology, why didn't we use it before? Why did we let other species think we were weak? Susan's expression became serious. Because we were hoping we wouldn't need it. We were hoping that when we met other intelligent species, they would be better than us. We thought that civilizations advanced enough to travel between stars would have evolved past the need for war and conquest. But they haven't, President Wells said quietly. No, they haven't. Every species in the galactic community is exactly what we were 1,000 years ago. They're tribes with advanced weapons, still thinking that might makes right. They see peace as weakness and kindness as stupidity. Director Murphy activated his own display, showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Our cultural exchange, programs, our trade missions, our diplomatic efforts, they were all intelligence-gathering operations. Every time an alien species laughed at our warnings, we learned something about their psychology. Every time they dismissed our capabilities, we mapped their weaknesses. The reports showed detailed information about every major species in the galaxy, their military capabilities, their political structures, their technologies, and most importantly, their blind spots. The Xanthari thinks strength comes from size and armor, Susan explained. The Vorthans believe superior technology automatically means victory. The Tekari Empire relies on overwhelming numbers. None of them understand the most important lesson humanity learned from 10,000 years of warfare. Which is, the president asked. That the most dangerous enemy is the one who doesn't want to fight, Susan replied. Every human who survived to pass on their genes did so because they were better at avoiding conflict than their neighbors. But when conflict became unavoidable, they were also better at winning it. General Hayes stood up and walked to the holographic display. What exactly can we do with this technology? Anything we need to do, Susan answered. We can make their weapons. Stop working by changing the laws of physics in the space around them. We can turn their armor into flower petals, or their engines into butterflies. We can age their ships 1,000 years in a few seconds, or we can make them young again. We can move their entire fleets to the other side of the galaxy, or we can move single atoms from one place to another. But the most important thing we can do, she continued, is be precise. We don't have to destroy entire worlds to win battles. We can target exactly what we want to affect and leave everything else completely untouched. President Wells stood up slowly. How many people know about this? About 12 million humans are involved in various black projects related to our defense capabilities. Most of them only know about their small part of the overall system. The rest of humanity believes we're exactly what we appear to be. A peaceful species trying to find our place in the galaxy, the president said. Exactly. And that's been our greatest weapon. Nobody expects the friendly neighbors to be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Director Murphy brought up another display showing alien intelligence reports about humanity. According to their own analysis, we're harmless. They think our military is small and weak. They believe our technology is primitive. They see our preference for negotiation as evidence that we can't fight. They're about to learn how wrong they are. General Hayes said grimly. Dr. Susan Grant pressed one final button, and the display changed to show the current positions of human assets throughout the galaxy. There were thousands of them, hidden in plain sight, disguised as peaceful traders, cultural exchange students, scientific researchers, and tourists. Every human colony, every human ship, every human citizen in galactic space has been part of our intelligence network for 30 years. We know where every major military base is located. We know the command codes for most of their weapon systems. We know which species are actually loyal to their governments and which ones are just afraid to rebel. We've been preparing for this war longer than most species have been part of the galactic community, she continued. The only question now is how much of our real capability we want to reveal. President Wells looked around the room at the faces of the people who would help her make the most important decision in human history. They killed a child, she said quietly. A 6-year-old girl who was sitting in her father's arms, scared and confused. They murdered her to make a point. Yes, Madam President, Susan replied. They did. Then they're going to learn what happens when you make humanity angry. Grand Admiral Thorian stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt proud of what he saw through the massive windows. Spread out in front of him was the largest military force in galactic history. 700,000 warships from 46 different species, all united by one purpose: destroy humanity before they could become a threat to galactic civilization. Thorian was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. The Vorthans had been exploring space for 10 million years, and he had commanded fleets for the last 50,000 of those years. His gray skin was marked with ritual scars that showed his victories, and his huge black eyes had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. He had never lost a battle. Status report, he commanded in his deep, rumbling voice. Sir, reported his tactical officer, all fleet elements are in position. The Xanthari Second Fleet has taken the left flank. The Tekari battle groups are holding the center. The Korthik war clans are positioned on our right. Reserve forces from 30 other species are ready to support any breakthrough. Thorian nodded with satisfaction. This fleet could conquer the entire galaxy if necessary. Against one young species that had shown nothing but weakness for 30 years, it was massive overkill. But he wanted to send a message that would echo through space for millennia. This is what happens when you challenge the established order. Any sign of human response? He asked. Long-range sensors show minimal activity in the target system, his science officer replied. We detect 3 ships approaching our position, but they appear to be alone. Thorian laughed, a sound like distant thunder. 3 ships against 700,000? Are the humans completely insane, or are they coming to surrender? On the bridge of the human ship USS Nemesis, Captain Alex Murphy sat quietly in his command chair and watched the alien fleet through his own view screen. The Nemesis was sleek and black, about the size of a city block, and it moved through space without making any sound or light that normal sensors could detect. Alex was 45 years old with brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been preparing for this moment his entire adult life, training in secret facilities and learning to use weapons that most humans didn't know existed. Next to him sat his crew of 30, but they weren't typical military personnel. Lieutenant Commander Jenny Walsh was his communications officer, but she had studied poetry and philosophy before joining the military. Dr. Marcus Chun was his science officer, but he had also written books about ethics and morality. Sergeant Rita Johnson was his weapons officer, but she had been a teacher before the war began. "Captain," Jenny reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet." "Put it through," Alex said calmly. Grand Admiral Thorian's huge face appeared on the main screen, his black eyes staring at Alex with a mixture of amusement and disgust. "Human vessel," Thorian said in his deep voice. "I am Grand Admiral Thorian. Of the combined galactic fleet, you are outnumbered by more than 200,000 to 1. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick." Alex looked at the ancient alien commander with steady eyes. "Admiral Thorian, I'm Captain Alex Murphy of the Human Defense Fleet. I'm going to give you one chance to turn your ships around and leave. This is not a fight you can win." The sound of laughter echoed across every communication channel in the alien fleet. 700,000 ships full of alien warriors were laughing at 3 human vessels. "Human," Thorian said when the laughter died down, "your species has caused enough trouble. You destroyed the Xanthari First Fleet through some kind of trickery, but tricks will not work against this force. We represent the combined military might of 46 civilizations." "I know exactly who you represent," Alex replied quietly. "I also know that you're here because you're afraid. You're afraid that a species you thought was weak might actually be stronger than you. You're afraid that everything you believe about power and conquest might be wrong." "We fear nothing from humans," Thorian declared. "Then why did you bring 700,000 ships to fight 3? Alex asked. For a moment, the ancient admiral looked uncertain. Then his expression hardened again. "Because we want to make sure you are completely destroyed. No survivors, no colonies, no trace that humanity ever existed." Alex Murphy's voice became very quiet, but somehow it carried across every ship in both fleets. "You came here to commit genocide. You want to murder every human man, woman, and child in the galaxy, because we had the courage to defend ourselves when you attacked us." "Yes," Thorian said simply. "Then you've made the biggest mistake in galactic history," Alex replied. He turned to his weapons officer. "Sergeant Johnson, remove all safety restrictions. Dr. Chun, activate reality manipulation systems. Lieutenant Walsh, broadcast our response on all frequencies." "Yes, sir," all 3 officers replied. Jenny Walsh opened a communication channel that reached every ship in both fleets, every space station within 50 light years, and every inhabited world that was listening. "This is Captain Alex Murphy of the Human Defense Fleet," Alex announced. 46 species have joined together to attempt the complete genocide of humanity. They believe that superior numbers and advanced technology make them invincible. They're about to learn why human children study history." The USS Nemesis began to change. Like its sister ships, Retribution and Consequence, it started unfolding and reshaping itself. What had looked like a simple warship became something that defied understanding. The hull flowed like liquid metal. Weapons emerged from impossible. Spaces and energy fields that bent reality itself surrounded the vessel. "What is that thing?" Someone screamed over the alien communication channels. Alex Murphy's voice answered them. This is what a human warship looks like when we stop pretending to be peaceful. The first shot from the Nemesis didn't destroy enemy ships. It did something much worse. A beam of energy that looked like liquid starlight reached out and touched a Zenthari battleship. The massive vessel began to age rapidly, its hull corroding and cracking as centuries passed in seconds. Within moments, the mighty warship crumbled into ancient dust. The second shot hit a formation of Takari destroyers. Instead of aging them, it transformed their weapons into flowers. Bright red roses bloomed from their gun barrels, and their missile tubes sprouted daisies and sunflowers. The third shot turned a Vorthan cruiser's armor into glass, beautiful and fragile, and completely useless for protection. "Impossible," Grand Admiral Thorian whispered. "You keep using that word," Alex Murphy said over the communication channel. "But humans learned a long time ago that impossible just means nobody has figured out how to do it yet." The USS Retribution, commanded by Captain Sarah Kim, began its own demonstration. Her ship's weapons reached out and grabbed entire squadrons of alien vessels, moving them through space like a child arranging toy boats in a bathtub. Some ships found themselves transported to the edge of the galaxy. Others were gently placed in orbit around distant suns where they would be harmless but unharmed. The USS Consequence, under Captain Bob Taylor, showed a different approach. His weapons simply made enemy ships stop working. Their engines went quiet, their weapons powered down, their life support systems switched to minimum settings. The ships were completely functional, but they couldn't do anything except drift helplessly in space. "This is impossible," Thorian repeated, but his voice shook now. "No," Alex Murphy corrected him. "This is what happens when a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other decides you're a problem that needs solving." The human demonstration continued for exactly 17 minutes. In that time, they disabled, relocated, or neutralized over 400,000 alien warships without killing a single crew member. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were turned into harmless objects that couldn't hurt anyone. But the truly frightening part, Alex continued as his weapons powered down, isn't what we just did to your ships. It's that we did it while being gentle. We could have erased your entire fleet from existence. We could have turned your ships into butterflies or your crews into flowers. We could have sent you all back in time to before you were born. Instead, we just took away your ability to hurt people. Every ship we touched can still support life. Your crews are safe and healthy. You can even fly home as long as you don't try to attack anyone on the way." Grand Admiral Thorian stared at his tactical displays in horror. More than half of his mighty fleet was helpless. But worse than that, the humans had demonstrated complete mastery over the fundamental forces of reality itself. They weren't using advanced technology. They were rewriting the laws of physics as they went along. "How?" he asked quietly. "Because we had to," Alex Murphy replied. "Every human who survived to pass down their genes did so by being better at warfare than everything that wanted to kill them. We spent millennia fighting ice ages, plagues, disasters, and each other. We learned that the deadliest predator isn't the one with the biggest teeth or the strongest muscles. It's the one that can adapt to any situation and turn anything into a weapon." The remaining alien ships began to retreat, their commanders too shocked and terrified to continue fighting. "Wait," Alex called out, stopping them. "I want you to deliver a message to every government, every military leader, every species in the galaxy." "What message?" Thorian asked. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was unlike any in its 10,000-year history. The great chamber that usually echoed with the confident voices of 46 species now hummed with fear and confusion. Representatives who had arrived in luxury ships now sat in chairs that had been hastily repaired after their fleets limped home from their encounter with humanity. High Counselor Mexthal of the Vorthend hegemony called the session to order with a voice that shook despite his efforts to sound calm. His ancient species had ruled portions of the galaxy for millions of years, but today he looked like a frightened old creature trying to understand a world that no longer made sense. "We are here," he began slowly, "to discuss the human situation." Ambassador Jake Morrison sat at the human table, but he was not alone this time. Dr. Helen Park sat to his right, a small woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. To his left sat General Chris Anderson, a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. The three humans looked calm and patient, as if they were attending a friendly meeting about trade agreements rather than an emergency session about galactic warfare. "You lied to us," accused Counselor Vexthai of the Zenthari Empire. The proud mantis-like creature, who had once laughed at human warnings, now spoke in a quiet, defeated voice. "For 30 years, you pretended to be peaceful while building weapons that can change reality itself." Dr. Helen Park leaned forward slightly. "Counselor Vexthai, we never lied about anything. We told you exactly what we were from the very first day we joined this council. The problem is that none of you understood what the word human actually means." She activated a small device on the table, and a holographic display appeared above the assembled delegates. It showed Earth as it had been millions of years ago, covered in ice and populated by creatures that looked nothing like modern humans. "This is where we came from," Dr. Park explained. "A world that tried to kill us in every possible way. Ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. Volcanoes that blocked out the sun. Diseases that killed 9 out of every 10 people. Predators that were bigger, stronger, and faster than we were." The display changed to show early humans, small and weak-looking, huddled around fires while enormous predators stalked them in the darkness. "We survived because we learned to think our way out of problems that should have killed us. We didn't grow claws, so we made spears. We didn't grow thick fur, so we made clothing. We didn't get stronger, so we got smarter." General Anderson stood up, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for war. "Every challenge our species faced, we overcame by working together and building tools. When we discovered fire, we used it to cook food and scare away predators. When we learned to farm, we used it to feed larger populations. When we invented writing, we used it to share knowledge across generations." The holographic display showed human history accelerating through thousands of years. Stone tools became bronze weapons. Bronze weapons became iron swords. Iron swords became gunpowder. Gunpowder became nuclear weapons. "And when we split the atom," General Anderson continued, "we immediately realized 2 things. First, we had discovered something that could destroy our entire species. Second, if we could split atoms, we could probably do other impossible things too." Counselor Murtaugh of the Tekari Empire, his blue skin pale with fear, interrupted. "But why did you hide this from us? Why pretend to be weak?" Ambassador Jake Morrison spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "Because we hoped we were wrong about you. We hoped that species advanced enough to travel between stars would have evolved past the need for conquest and war. We hoped. That intelligence naturally led to wisdom." His voice carried a sadness that made even the most hardened alien warriors feel uncomfortable. "For 30 years, we watched and waited and learned. Every time one of you laughed at our warnings, we gathered data about your psychology. Every time you dismissed our capabilities, we mapped your military weaknesses. Every time you threatened our people, we prepared better defenses." Dr. Park activated another display, This one showing detailed intelligence reports on every species in the galactic community. Their military capabilities, their political structures, their technologies, and their blind spots were all laid out in perfect detail. "We know more about all of you than you know about each other," she said quietly. "We know which of your governments are stable and which are held together by fear. We know which of your weapons actually work and which ones are for show. We know which of your species are naturally aggressive and which ones are just following orders because they're afraid." The alien delegates looked at each other with growing unease. Some of the information in the displays was classified at the highest levels of their respective governments. "How?" whispered Counselor Zexmar of the Korthic war clans. "Because we've been preparing for this conversation since we first learned we weren't alone in the universe," General Anderson replied. Every human colony ship carried intelligence gathering equipment. Every cultural exchange student was also a spy. Every trade mission mapped your defenses. Every diplomatic meeting gave us more information about how you think and what you fear. We spent 30 years learning everything we could about every species in the galaxy, Dr. Park added. Not because we wanted to conquer you, but because we wanted to understand you. We hoped that understanding would lead to friendship. Hi. Counselor Mexthal found his voice again. And now? Ambassador Jake Morrison stood slowly, his expression both sad and determined. Now we know that friendship isn't possible between species that think might makes right, and a species that has spent its entire history proving that intelligence beats strength. What does that mean for us? Asked Counselor Reet Ton of the Silicate. Consortium. It means you're going to learn a new way of living, General Anderson said firmly. The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation is beginning, whether you like it or not. Dr. Park pressed another button, and the display changed to show the current status of military forces throughout the galaxy. What the delegates saw made them gasp in shock and fear. Every aggressive species in the galaxy had discovered that their weapons no longer worked as weapons. Xanthari battle fleets found their ships converted into mobile hospitals. Tekari war machines had become farming equipment. Vorthan conquest fleets were now deep space research vessels. How did you this? Mexthal asked in a voice barely above a whisper. The same way we've solved every other problem in our history, Jake Morrison replied. We figured out how to turn the things that were trying to hurt us into things that could help instead. But this is impossible, protested Counselor Vexthai. You can't just change the fundamental nature of matter across the entire galaxy. Dr. Park smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. It was the patient smile of a teacher explaining something simple to a confused student. Counselor, your species has been traveling between stars for thousands of years, but you still think of technology as tools that do specific jobs. Humans think of technology as a way to reshape reality to match our needs. When we decided that weapons were the problem, we simply changed what weapons are. From this day forward, General Anderson announced, any attempt to build weapons of mass destruction will result in those weapons becoming something beneficial instead. Any attempt to conquer other worlds will result in your fleets being converted to humanitarian missions. Any attempt to commit genocide will result in your entire civilization being relocated to uninhabited worlds where you can't hurt anyone. You're taking away our freedom, accused Counselor Murtaugh. We're taking away your ability to hurt innocent people, Jake Morrison corrected. You're still free to explore space, build cities, create art, advance your sciences, and live your lives however you want. You just can't use violence to take things that belong to other people. High Counselor Mexthal looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow delegates. Fear, anger, and confusion stared back at him. What if we refuse to accept this new order? He asked. Dr. Park's expression became serious. Then you'll discover what humans are really capable of when we stop being gentle. What you saw at the battle near New Haven was us showing restraint. We disabled your fleets without killing anyone. We demonstrated our power without causing permanent harm. But if you force us to act again, General Anderson added, we won't. Be so careful about your feelings. The chamber fell silent, except for the sound of alien breathing and the hum of life support systems. Representatives who had ruled star systems looked at three humans and realized that their entire understanding of power had been wrong. We have a choice to make, Jake Morrison said finally. We can work together to build a galaxy where every species can live in peace and prosperity. Or we can continue the old ways of conquest and war and learn what happens when humans decide that peaceful coexistence is impossible. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. 30 years ago, we joined your galactic community, hoping to find friends among the stars. Instead, we found predators, who mistook our kindness for weakness. You thought our warnings were jokes. You thought our peace was surrender.